Hello, everyone. I would like to thank you for joining us. If you can hear me, please write in the chat area, just to know that you can hear me. Thank you, Dina. Thank you, Anna. Hello, Rachel. Okay, thanks. This webinar is part of the Online Academy program teaching English as a second language. And I hope that you will find it interesting. If you have any question or request during the webinar, please write in the chat area. I would like to present the lecturer, Mrs. Arona Gvaryahu. Arona Korman Gvaryahu has been working in the fields of learning disabilities and teaching English as a foreign language for many years. She is the national counselor for EFL-LD for the Israel Ministry of Education and assists teachers all over the country with issues associated with the teaching of English to people with special educational needs of all ages. In addition, Arona works with the branch of the ministry that is responsible for pupils at risk from 1st through 12 grades. As a teacher educator, she is particularly interested in developing ways to help teachers include all learners in their classrooms, at the same time placing the emphasis on understanding the learners' abilities as well as the reasons for their challenges. Just to know who with you, me and Arona. Arona, the microphone is yours.
So hi, Aryeh, thank you very much. And I'm so excited to have so many of you with us tonight. I think for some of you, it's morning, right? Are some of you morning people? I don't even know what the time difference is between here and Argentina. That's about as far away as we get. I think everybody else is relatively close. And tonight, we're going to spend a little bit of time, 5 hours earlier. Okay, not too bad. Thank you, Rachel. So tonight, we're going to spend a little bit of time talking a little bit about things that make English challenging. And, oh, hi, Orly in Los Angeles. Yes, it's 11 in the morning. Make English challenging for our foreign language learners. English is hard enough as it is. We all know that. And for kids with learning disabilities or other kinds of special learning needs, it is often too challenging. Too challenging because we ask them to learn how to read a new language with different kinds of language structures. We ask them to develop vocabulary skills. We ask them to process and recreate morphology in their minds. We ask them to understand syntax, and I think so, Elizabeth. We ask them to understand syntax and grammar. It is very, very difficult. I'd sort of like to begin with somebody I think we all know as he learns French. I don't know how many of you are aware or have seen this clip. Every time I see it, I laugh. And we're not really laughing at Joey. We're laughing at what can happen when someone is trying to speak a foreign language. So please don't laugh at Joey. Let's laugh at ourselves. And as you watch, if there's anything that comes to mind or anything you might question, or sometimes, you know, one of the things that is so important here is, why is it so difficult for Joey? Why is it so difficult for him to learn French? So if you have any thoughts in your mind, anything that might come up, please write in the chat, and it goes on for a couple minutes.
All right, seems pretty simple. Your first line is my name is Claude. So just repeat after me. Je m'appelle Claude.
Je te coupe Claude.
Let's try it again.
Okay.
Je m'appelle Claude.
Je te plie blue.
Huh. It's not quite what I'm saying.
Really? Sounds exactly the same to me.
Does? Really?
Yeah.
All right, let's just try it again. Really listen.
Got it.
Je m'appelle Claude.
Je te flie.
Oh, mon Dieu.
Oh, this fool.
Okay. I hope was that possible? Did you hear that, or that didn't work out well because my microphone was open? If anybody would like to hear it again, you can hear it. We can play it again. It's only 1 minute. Hi, Andrea. Welcome back. Okay, so why do you think he has such a difficult time? Do you want to hear it again so we can avoid the echo? Should we do that? Anybody else? There was no comment. Just Aryeh asked me to turn off my microphone because he thought that it was causing an echo. Okay, Hannah said it was clear. Andrea says it was clear. Okay, so why do you think Joey has such a hard time learning English? What's going on in his brain? Anybody want to comment? Anybody want to think? It is a comedy. You think he's not listening? No, I think he's listening. You think he needs a visual aid? Could be. The thing is that when he reads it later, it also comes out pretty funny. But he could use a visual aid that might help. Although French and English, assimilation of what, Lana? Yes, he does. In other words, yes, he does, Claire. He connects to the closest known words that he knows, and he probably has an auditory processing issue, which makes it difficult for him to process the sounds and repeat them. I'm glad, as you say here, just repeating. So it turns out that for many of our kids with learning disabilities, just repeating sounds that are foreign sounds make it very, very, very difficult. Andrea says one thing is that what you think you're saying and the other what you're really pronouncing, correct? And he doesn't really hear, he's not really processing what Phoebe is saying to him. And if you feel like going into it and looking at the whole clip, you'll see that he keeps trying, and after a while he thinks that he's actually doing a really great job. He doesn't really hear what he's saying. That's right. There you go. So auditory processing is a major, major issue for a lot of our learners of English as a foreign language because they don't process auditorily that well. They're not deaf. They hear, but they don't process the sounds and put them together so well. And we know that people who have phonological awareness issues also have issues with putting sounds together to create words. And when that's an issue, then it also becomes more complex for speech and for reading, and then of course for writing. I want you to keep Joey in your mind. And also if you do join our course, to always have, as we learn things, to always have a student in your head that you can connect to and relate to. Rachel says something, especially because we tend to translate the sounds to sounds we're used to hearing and producing. Exactly. That's exactly the case. And he thinks that French is so weird that he just turns it into some gobbledygook. Okay. So this is our course. And I want you to remember that English is something that all the cool kids are doing. And that's why I chose this button. I'd like to begin with a story. I'd like you to listen carefully to the story. If you can, avoid reading it. But I did place it for those of you that like to hear and read at the same time, which is probably most of us. But if you can avoid it, avoid looking at the words on the screen. Okay? And I'm just going to tell you a story. And this is an old English tale from a wonderful, wonderful collection of stories collected by Danny Kaye, who is a wonderful American actor and musician and dancer and singer and performer. And the story is also online now, and it's called Master of All Masters. A girl once went to the fair to hire herself for servant. At last, a funny old gentleman engaged her and took her home to his house. When she got there, he told her that he had something to teach her, for that in his house he had his own names for things. He said to her, "What will you call me?" "Master, or Mister, or whatever you please, sir," says she. He said, "You must call me Master of all Masters." "And what would you call this?" he said, pointing to his bed. "Bed or couch, or whatever you please, sir." "No, no, that's my barnacle." "And what do you call these?" said he, pointing to his pantaloons. "Breeches or trousers, or whatever you please, sir." "No, no, you must call them squibs and crackers." "And what would you call her?" pointing to the cat. Wait, I think I missed one. Whoops, whoops, whoops. Sorry. What happened here? I'll go back. And what would you call her? Pointing to the cat. "Cat or kit, or whatever you please, sir." "No, no, you must call her Whitefaced Simony." "And what would you call that?" he said, pointing to the water. "Water or wet, or whatever you please, sir." "No, no, that's Phonological. And what do you call all this?" asked he as he pointed to the house. "House or cottage, or whatever you please, sir." "No, no, you must call it high top or mountain." "And what would you call this?" he said, pointing to the fire. And she said, "Fire or spirits, or whatever you please, sir." "No, no, you must call it Hotcockalorum." I hope you have all those new vocabulary words in your head. In your head. That very night, the servant woke her master up in a fright and said, "Master of all masters, get out of your barnacle and put on your squibs and crackers, for Whitefaced Simony has got a spark of Hotcockalorum on its tail, and unless you get some Phonological, high topper mountain will be all on Hotcockalorum." That's all. Now, how many new vocabulary words were there in the story? Anybody want to guess without going back and checking? Anybody? Can you hear me? 5 or 6? Anybody else? Around 8? So basically 7. 7 vocabulary words. And apparently that's a really good number to teach, correct? So how many do you remember? How many words do you remember from English to the unknown, or from the unknown to the English? What's better? Is there a better way to go? From English to the unknown, or from unknown to the English? Is there a better way to go? Well, let's look and think. How many of you remember any words? Anybody? Just pop them in. Me? Any new words? Nobody remembers any words? Should we read this? Hotcockalorum, Whitefaced Simony. I don't remember out of context, but I can remember them. Excellent. So we have Master of all Masters. And Lana says Topper Mountain. So together, all of us together can recreate the story. Correct? Well, there are lots of reasons why we don't remember words, right? There are lots of reasons why our students don't remember words. There are a lot of reasons why regular learners have a hard time remembering new words. Why? Because there's not enough exposure. Maybe the working memory isn't doing a good enough job. Maybe there's an issue with executive functioning. Anytime you see a vocabulary word or a concept in the PowerPoint that you're not sure of or you don't understand, please write it in and I'll explain it now and then in greater detail later, in maybe one of our later sessions. There might be issues with storage and retrieval. Categorizing might not be so good. Sometimes we don't store efficiently. And time erases things. It doesn't only erase memories. You know, I sometimes think that time erases some of the better memories and the more painful memories remain. But in seconds, words can be erased. So let's see. Maybe they don't hear the word in the first place. Maybe they didn't connect to the word in the first place. Just maybe there's a problem with the perception, the reception, the processing, the categorization, or the storage. Maybe it wasn't activated. Maybe we weren't cognitively hooked enough. Or maybe we just have to hear the story again. How many of you would like to hear the story again? Anybody? Okay, Dina? Okay, so here we go. We're going back to the story again. Here we go. An old English tale. A girl once went to the fair to hire herself for a servant. Now, this time I'm giving you a task, which I didn't do before. And this time I want you to count the new vocabulary words and see if you can remember them. At last, a funny old gentleman engaged her and took her home to his house. When she got there, he told her that he had something to teach her, for that in his house he had his own names for things. He said to her, "What will you call me?" "Well, master or mister or whatever you please, sir," says she. He said, "You must call me master of all masters." "And what would you call this?" he said, pointing to his bed. "Bed or couch or whatever you please, sir." "No, no, that's my barnacle." "And what do you call these?" said he, pointing to his pantaloons. "Breeches or trousers or whatever you please, sir." "You must call them squibs and crackers." "And what would you call her?" he said, pointing to the cat. "Cat or kit or whatever you please, sir." "No, no, you must call her Whitefaced Simony." "And what would you call this?" he said, pointing to the water. "Well, water or wet or whatever you please, sir." "No, no, Phonological is its name." "And what do you call all this?" he asked, as he pointed to the house. "Well, house or cottage or whatever you please, sir." "No, no, you must call it High Topper Mountain." "And what would you call this?" he said, pointing to the fire. She said, "Well, fire or spirit or whatever you please, sir." "No, no, you must call it Hotcockalorum." That very night the servant woke her master up in a fright and said, "Master of all masters, get out of your barnacle, put on your squibs and crackers, for White-Faced Simony has got a spark of Hotcockalorum on its tail. And unless you get some Pondalorum, High Topper Mountain will be all on Hotcockalorum." That's all. Before I ask you for your new words, I want to ask you how you think the servant, or why you think the servant was so successful in her vocabulary acquisition in this foreign language. Anybody have an idea? Gladys, Claire. Daphne, I didn't see you. Welcome, welcome. Tell us where you're from. Anybody? She was very submissive. Submissive to what? She was autistic? Why do you think? Gladys, because it was an emergency and she had a goal to satisfy her master. But just a joke, thanks. Hi, Daphne. She had a different memory? Maybe she did. I think I'm going to ask you another question. Didn't she have tremendous motivation to succeed? Wasn't it really super important for her to learn all those words for two reasons? One, because otherwise the house would be on Hotcockalorum and burned down. And two, because she needed the job, even though he's a little bit of a kook. She wanted to please her master. There you go. She was in a panic. People lose memory. Some people gain memory. And maybe she had her memory before. Maybe she worked really hard on those words. When things are really important, some people lose because we have fight or flight. And some people, it increases their attention and makes them more directed. That's right. She probably wanted to please her master. She needed it to keep her job. Okay, everybody. So how you doing on the vocabulary words? Anybody want to offer anything? Anybody? 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 Nobody wants to barnacle. bed barnacle. Thank you. Anything else? Does anybody remember how to say water? 1, 2, boom, 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 boom. High topper mountain. Thank you, Rachel. Pondalorum. Thank you. What a condalorum? That's a combination of two words, cockalorum and pondalorum. Does anybody remember what Hotcockalorum was? Fire. That's right. Okay. And what about the cat? What was the cat's name? White-faced. Simon, good. White something, white-faced, white-faced. Simony, thank you, Claire. And does anybody remember what the house was called? I'm sure you all remember that. White. There you go, Rachel. Excellent. And Gladys, you got it too, a lot of it. Anybody remember the house? High Topper Mountain. That's right. I hope we meet there someday. So moving right, I think you guys did really well, really well. And you see how much a difference it made for you as foreign language teachers who know multiple languages. I'm sure most of you know at least 2 languages, if not 3, based on where you live and how you communicate. You're good foreign language learners, and you still needed to hear everything twice and to make connections. Okay. Sorry, I'm going in the wrong direction. I never learn. Sometimes our students don't need to attend more. They need us to attend more to them. Right, you're right, Rachel. The first time I didn't tell you, you had to remember the words. That's right, I plopped it on you. Sometimes we talk about kids having attention problems, and many kids who have attention problems or people with attention issues, we used to say that they have auditory or visual memory issues, but sometimes they just didn't hear it in the first place, or they hook out. But sometimes when we talk about attention, our learners need more attention, more TLC to get hooked into the learning process. So I really believe, thank you, Rachel, I like it too, that kids who need the most love will ask for it in the most unloving of ways. And we have to remember that they're not necessarily the ones like Joey who aren't listening. We think he's listening, who seems like to sort of nudgy, gets on our nerves a little bit. He really needs a lot of attention and he probably could have used a lot more single syllable repetition and a lot more processing. And she probably went a little bit too quickly for him. So we have to remember that sometimes we want them to attend more, but sometimes they really do need more attention to get hooked. And sometimes in the middle of the learning process, they need a break. So David Sladkey has some really, really lovely brain breaks that we haven't even really begun. We've only been together for 20 minutes, but sometimes it's important after 20 minutes or so to have a brain break so that we can help them refocus, so that we can help reorient the brain and hook them in to relearning. So you might want to look this up. It takes a couple minutes and there's tons of brain breaks online. Back to English. So we went away from English a little bit with our new vocabulary in our funny language, where we used English to a certain extent as the hook, right? White-faced simony, or Hotcockalorum, or master of all masters, or high topper mountain, to make the hook because we know English. But when we talk about learners who don't know English at all and have to reconnect or connect or find something to connect to in the language, not only do they have auditory confusion where so many words seem similar, and I'm going to read them to you. This, there, thus, though, these, them, then, these, that, the, there, they, think, then. But they also are often visually confusing. This, there, thus, those, these, them, then, these, that, the, there, they, think, then. It's very, very confusing. In some cases, it's only the vowel in the word that is different. And that makes all the difference. And for us, as good speakers of English and good readers of English and understanders of English, we use these words as keys in sentences to tell us how many, to tell us where, to tell us when, to tell us whom. And children who have visual issues and or auditory processing issues often find these particular words completely confusing. One little boy once said to me, he said it in Hebrew, but I'll say it in English here. One little boy once said to me, Arona, and he couldn't stop laughing after he said it. He said, you keep telling me these words. To me, they all sound the same and look exactly the same. He said, look, there's TH, 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 TH in all of them. We have to keep this in mind as we teach, when we teach, before we teach. These are things that have to be pulled up, pointed out, and a lot of attention has to be paid to these little, teeny, tiny words. Even children who are decoding slowly, or children who have any kind of visual processing issues, even if we have taught them how to basically read, they can easily get confused with these words. Then there's phonological confusion, and I just put up 3 words that are long, confusing, and repeat sounds. Confusion, cacophony, it can be a catastrophe. The kids need a lot more exposure. How many times does someone have to see a word in order to learn it? To see a word in order to learn it? Someone without a learning disability. Anybody want to throw in a number? I love it. Okay, so you're all more or less close. Someone with a learning disability in his first language needs to see a word 19 times in order to remember it. And that's right, Rachel. At least 20 times in order to remember it. And not like 20 times in 20 years, and not 20 times in 20 weeks, but 20 times in a very, very short time. So it's again and again and again and again and again and again. And we think of I met with a group of teachers today who teach very challenged kids. That's right, repetition and high frequency. They teach very, very challenged kids. And they have 2 hours of English a week. So I said, oh, that's absolutely fantastic. What they learn on Monday, they've forgotten by Thursday. And then they have time from Thursday to forget what they learned till Monday. So there's really not a lot of active learning that can go on. They need exposure and they need practice. One is the same. Exposure is practice. Without reading, without knowing how to read, there's less exposure. When there's less exposure, there's less knowledge. Now, we know that many of our learners learn through television or songs or the internet, their phones. I know a lot of kids learn through different things on their phones that they hear. But it is often important to have a visual image as reflective of what you're hearing. And in a language like Spanish, which makes so much sense, the match works. Turkish, I believe. Tell me if I'm wrong. Turkish, I believe, is also a language like that, where what you see is what you get. Whereas English is not like that at all. What you see is often not what we get. Okay? So I have a couple patterns. For example, we have to work with them on basic pattern recognition. Right, that's what I thought. Turkish is just about totally phonetic. Right, that's what I thought. That's right, Rachel. English is very hard to read. It is. It's very hard to read. So here we have a pattern. One of the things that we'll talk about in the course is the importance of identifying patterns to work on. Not just single sound learning, but patterns. So here we have IGHT, and right, it comes from the German, from the Norse, Northern European. So we have light, might, fight, right, sight, bright, night. These are all holiday words, aren't they? Okay. Sometimes it's interesting and calming and confusing to understand the source of the funny spelling of a word. Sometimes that's a way to help our learners hook in to the difference of the word or the pattern and help them remember that pattern, like the IGHT, which comes from Northern Europe and all sorts of other kinds of things. Can somebody think of and give me another example of a word in English that comes from somewhere else? O-U-G-H, that is right. There are at least 7 different ways to pronounce the same letter. And there's 6 ways to write the SH sound. 100% correct. Impossible. Impossible. There's also a lovely, lovely clip. We won't have time for it today. If you feel like looking at it online, go and watch Lucy. Right, enough funny phonetics. That's right. Thank you. You can go in to watch Lucy and Desi Arnaz and look up Desi Reads a Bedtime Story. It's very, very funny. Okay, it's right. We have all these different combinations of letters that give us the same sound. You would think that we wouldn't need all that complexity. And then we have a single letter that makes zillions of sounds. How many letters in English only make one sound 100% of the time? Anyone? Oh, no, you're too generous, Andrea. P can be silent. R, no. R, sometimes you don't hear. Hi, Teresa, I didn't see you before. N, no, we often don't hear N. It's at the end of a word. B can be silent. Hi. Anybody? How many letters? K can be silent. Keep going. F would work, except for the word of. Yes, Rachel, what? What? Which letters are consistent 100% of the time? We're waiting. K can be silent. That's right. So where are the letters? M, no, you can have, M can also be silent, like in, no, what's that word? Mnemonic. Yeah, there you go. Thank you. Thank you very much, Lana. Hi, Badera. Hello. I didn't see you before. And no. Z, yes, except what? What's the problem with Z? You have it in your name. Hi. One of the words we teach, at least here, that we teach is a very basic cognate, is the word pizza. I don't know if you guys use that word in your languages as a cognate. Here we use it as a cognate, and there we have ZZ and it's tsa, and that's not very helpful. Keep going. 2 letters. 2. Now I talking too much and I let it out. 2. You pronounce it differently. How do you pronounce it, Rachel? T, no, T can be TH. Pizza, I see. So it wouldn't work anyway. Oh, and there's the ZS, too confusing. So I'm S, right, S, not Z. So I'm going to tell you what the letters are in English. I'll count to 10 if you guys want to keep guessing. There are 2 letters in English that are consistent 100% of the time. Only 2 letters. 2. Yeah, that's right. Not a very high number. The letter V and the letter J. And those of you that know other languages know that J and V don't make the J sound in many European languages. And the letter V also doesn't always make the V sound. There are other letters that make the V sound in many European languages. So we have 2 letters in English, J and V. And if you play Scrabble, does anybody here know how to play Scrabble? Scrabble, those are pretty high score letters because they're not very common. We don't need them that much. And all the other letters we use a lot. And part of the reason J sound is spelled with a C. How about that? There you go, Claire. Thank you so much. So the all the other letters we use a lot, and they're very flexible. But that makes learning how to read very, very difficult. In general, one of the things that we can say about English is that it's a very yes, thank you, Claire. That's right. In Spanish, it sounds like chet in Hebrew. That's right, the J, exactly. So one of the things that's also interesting to learn about English, and I'm sure you all know this, but sometimes it's good to reinforce it for our students, is if we think about we have so many irregular verbs, and we have so many words that look like one thing and sound like something else. And usually it's because of overuse, or not overuse, but being used a lot. The irregular verbs that we have are actually the more common words. And the regular verbs are somewhat less common, not like weird, but less common. So I like to think of it as an image. The image being someone walks along the beach in Marseille or in Nice, drinking a bottle of Coke. And his girlfriend calls him and says, "Sorry, Charlie, I found someone else." He gets really angry and he throws the bottle of Coke down and it breaks. I wouldn't say it shatters, but it breaks. Right then and there, if we pick up any piece from that bottle, we can tell that it came from a Coke bottle. It's sharp. It's clear. We can see right through it. Correct? However, it can roll into the Mediterranean. Just be in the sand for a while. Roll into the Mediterranean. Sail around in the Mediterranean for a bit. And after a while, walking on the Tel Aviv beach, or the Jaffa beach, or the Netanya beach, or the Akko beach, we can find something sort of shiny in the sand. And we can pick it up. Exactly, that's exactly right, Rachel. And we can pick it up. And when we pick it up, it no longer is sharp. It's round. It's no longer see-through. But we have some remnant of the fact that it was probably from a Coca-Cola bottle. And that's exactly what happens with language. Irregular, what we use more tends to be irregular because of overuse. These are the things that are confusing for our teacher, for our kids. Remember, they don't really like rules that much, but when it comes to language, they really like rules because that is something that they can fit into when they don't remember. You know, many people tend to be less flexible in situations where they feel insecure. And when we feel very secure, we're more flexible. So children learning a foreign language who have a learning disability like to have, exactly, Rachel, you're 100% correct. We'll get to that in a second. We have kids who are learning a foreign language want something to hold on to that's consistent. And there's so many things that are inconsistent. Of course, there are many, many things that are consistent, but many more that are inconsistent. Yeah, Rachel, that's a nice image, right? We use our good plates that we don't use, we don't break as much. I lose spoons on a regular basis. So, and we know that if people cover their sofas and chairs in the living room, keep the things careful, then they don't break. Claire said something. Little kids around 3 years old play with the rules in L1. Right, so they'll say goad or that's right. They actually, what they do is I don't know if they play with the rule, but they take the rule and then they overgeneralize. So at the beginning, they learn the correct word, and when they figure out that there's a rule, they overgeneralize. That's exactly it. Yes. Okay. Whoops. See, I'm not learning. I'm not learning anything. What happened? Aryeh? Oh, here we go. Okay. But actually, there's nothing that helps to learn the word like practice. Practice makes better. It doesn't always make perfect unless you know a wonderful pianist or something. But practice absolutely makes better. And something that our students have to learn to do more of is practice. They need to practice much more in order for that little tiny step. It's very tiring. It's very exhausting. It's very aggravating. It's very frustrating. And there's so many other things that they have to learn and pay attention to. It's not only English. They're not just learning English. Thank you, Therese. How are you? I was so happy to see your name. Okay. So there are lots of ways to do that. One is active exposure, active teaching, and using and understanding and creating new ways to use the word or the language. One of the things that we forget, I think, or I see this a lot in regular classes, is teachers teach, but they don't actively teach enough. There's a lot of, yes, Rachel, thanks. There's a lot of leaning on previous knowledge and assuming that they remember from lesson to lesson. And they don't always remember from lesson to lesson. There has to be a lot more opportunity for practice. I know that here our classes are very large. Our classes here are much too large. What happens in Argentina when we talk about foreign language learning, or in Turkey, or in Los Angeles? Are the classes smaller? Is there more opportunity for kids to learn? Is there more opportunity for practice in the classroom setting? Is there more opportunity for children to try and to make mistakes? Anybody? 26 per. Oh, hi, Andrea. Now you're from Colombia. 26 per group. So what do you think about that number? It's a good number. See, look at that. 19 to 22 at the university, 25 in school. See, that makes more sense than 35 or 40. And sometimes we think, see, it's difficult in general classes. Gladys says there's over 20 students. Orly says whoops, I lost you. Orly, this was so fast. 1 second. Orly says one-on-one. So that's different, right? It's a whole different way of working. When we have so many students, we don't really get to all of them. And there's a lot of assumption that they'll do their own practice. Yes, exactly. There. So now, thank you everybody for your input. It's been really terrific so far. Memory is easier said than done. And I found this lovely navigation card online. This lovely navigation card online that's a way to sort of help my students when they get stuck. Recognizing that when they read, or when they can't remember the picture, there are different ways, they can't remember the word, sorry. There are different ways to read and try again. So one is an example here. They have eagle eye. Look carefully at the picture next to the word. Lips the fish. Get your lips ready to read. Stretch it out. Don't try to read it at once, but really sound out the word, or maybe chunk it. Break up the word into little words that you already know. Skippy Frog says if you're reading and sometimes you get frustrated, you can just skip the word. It's not so terrible to skip some of the words. Flippy the Dolphin says, you know what? Maybe the word, the letter, the vowel there in the middle of the word looks like it doesn't belong there. Like maybe I could read this easier said than Dane? No. Easier said than Dean? No. Let's try another one. Easier said than done. And try and lion is jump in and try to take your chance. There are a whole bunch of these online on Pinterest. Sometimes they're called anchor charts. And we'll talk about these also in the course a little bit more. In Hebrew, we call them navigation cards. We use these a lot in special education and in remedial English teaching in order to help kids have something with them to help them remember when they forget. Okay? For example, we use them in math by giving them, let's say, a few times tables to have in their notebook. So instead of wasting time trying to figure out 7 times 3, 8 times 4, 9 times 5, 7 times 6, they have the 7 times tables. And you look something up enough times, eventually you will remember better. We want to increase accessibility. In Hebrew, they're called kartisei nivut. Rachel, kartis nivut. We want to increase accessibility. We know that good thinkers need words. We also know, by the way, that when you don't have the words that you need, then it leads to other kinds of frustration and aggravation and negative behaviors. Words are very important. And reading is a gateway into the world. So it's imperative to find additional ways to expose our learners to as many words as possible to help them understand what they're taking in and allow them to make meaning with someone else. People with dyslexia remember things much better when the information has a context or a meaning. I think a lot of us do. But some people learn better, like they learn lists well. Other people learn things with context. People with reading disabilities tend to rely a lot on context. And that's why sometimes they can read, they might not be able to read all the words in the paragraph, but they'll read enough to get the idea. They might also read enough to make a mistake if they don't read it carefully, or if they get the this, the then, the then, the these, the those, all mixed up. English is not enough of a root-based language. Arabic is a root-based language. Hebrew is a root-based language. And so in Hebrew and in Arabic, when you learn the root, or when you figure out the root, or you look at the root of the word, you can get a better sense of what the word may mean. I don't know if you know this little nursery rhyme. Sing a song of sixpence, a pocket full of rye, 4 and 20 blackbirds baked in the pie. When the pie was open, the birds began to sing. Wasn't that a dainty dish to set before the king? Where was the king? The king was in his counting house, counting all his money. Now, in English, we don't have we have so many different structures of words. We can't do it like in Hebrew and Arabic, where we take one word and we have, like in Hebrew, we have 7, we call them shiv'a binyanim, 7 structures of a verb, of a word. I brought an example of one word in English that led to many, 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 many others. And if you look at it, that's right. Thank you, Rachel. And you look at the many others, you see that there's a lot of difference that's been added to these words. So we have the word count. Now, we count. Why was there a count? Right? We have 2 words for the word count. We have to count something, or to count on somebody, or to be a count, like a rosen, like a duke or something. Who was that count? Where did that count come from? Well, that count was of semi-royalty. He had land, and he had to count from his land. He had to count to make sure the serfs were giving him what they should be giving him. And he had to count out to give to the king, so the king could go to his counting house and count all his money. And the area where a count lived became a county, and then a country. But we also have a count. Where did they used to count out the money? They would count out the money on a counter, right? Where you put the money on the counter and you count it out. But a counter is also something that counts the money. But a person can also give us an account of our money. He will be an accountant, and we will have an account at the bank where hopefully we will have some money. And when we want to tell a story, we will recount the story. We can also do a recount and recount our money that we hope we have in the bank. Look what happens with a single word. But it's not helpful enough for our foreign language learners. It's not the same as taking a word that's the basis for to sit, to sat, a seat, a meeting place, a place to meet, a place to see, a place to sit. All those words are much more connected to count, county, country, counter, and counter, accountant, recount, and account. It's not enough. Back to our words. I hope you're thinking. I hope your minds are helping you remember all those words we heard at the beginning in our funny little story. When we use the new word immediately, and then we have to use it again. For example, Hotcockalorum, and then use it again an hour later. Phonological, and then use it again one day later. Well, High Topper Mountain doesn't need us anymore. And again, use it 1 week later. We might even begin to be able to tell the whole story. And after that, if all is well, you, as excellent learners, will rarely have to review Phonological, Hotcockalorum, High Topper Mountain, Whitefaced Simony, Master of all masters, Squibs and Crackers, Barnacle, bing. Look, it's already part of my active vocabulary. I can't even begin to tell you how many times I've read that story to remember all those pieces. We have working memory. Nachon, counterproductive, because counter has a completely different meaning, right? Our working memory, how many of you feel to a certain extent that many of our students, and maybe ourselves, have a working memory that's in this lovely picture that is posed in front of you on the screen? Nobody? Nobody? I can tell you that my working memory works much better with this working memory. It's also very helpful because it digs up things that we think, oh, we use it, to access more information. But it's not available all the time. It's available a lot of the time, but it's not available all the time. And it's not available for everything. It's not available for birth unless we put it in. Nachon. You're correct, Claire. It is too short term, and you can't use it on exams, right? And even in life, we can't use it all the time. And how many times have you looked for something on your phone, a picture or a piece of information, and the battery ran out, or you couldn't find it, or it got stored in the wrong place? And how much information do we sometimes need to have that unless we've put it in the phone, we can't find it? Like our great aunt's birthday. Hello. That will not be like a clear thing we can Google. Correct? So we also have to activate our working memory. And one of the things we know about the children we talked about at the beginning who have attention issues is that their working memory doesn't always work very efficiently. So we talked about all these different things. This is basically how executive functioning works. We have a central executive, that's our brain, and we learn things through reading, the phonological loop. The episodic buffer is the stories and things that happen, and the visual spatial sketch pad are the things that we write in our brain. And all of those things then get into our long-term memory. If there's a problem with any of those things, with the reading, with the processing, with the structuring, with the sequencing, with the visual patterns, with the spatial orientation, if it does get into our long-term memory, it enters our long-term memory confused or incorrectly. And then when we need to access it, it's much more difficult to find it, and it's much more difficult to use it correctly. And this is what happens with a lot of our kids. And if it's a foreign language, they don't have that much to lean on or to rely on. Yes, mnemonic, that's right. Mnemonic tips are very, very good. It's just hard to think of a mnemonic tip for everything. It's clear to us, it's not so clear to our learners, that in order for us to learn new words, in order for us to remember new things, in order for us to process and understand language structures and grammar and reading rules and spelling rules and vocabulary words and all sorts of different kinds of things, we have to reduce the number that we originally need to access. We have to repeat, we have to reuse, we have to revise, we have to renew, we have to recycle, we have to revise, we have to re-enter, we have to repeat, we have to reduce. We can't expect them to learn so many words at once. We need to reduce, and we need to prioritize. As teachers, it's our job to help our EFL, FLLD learners how to prioritize. And as teachers, it's our job, especially when they're younger, to prioritize for them. So if the whole class has to learn 20 new words, God forbid, poo, 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 then we say, you know what, you learn 7 and connect them and relate them and practice them to pick the words that are common and useful and important. Those, exactly, Rachel. Those are the things that are very, very, we want to prioritize and reduce. You get more done by doing less. It's not so easy because there's so many words, and too many is too much and often impossible. But remember, it's easier said than done. But it's nice to have different ways to remember. They can be outlandish, like Hotcockalorum. They can be funny, like Phonological. They can be strange, like squibs and crackers. They can be in context, like High Topper Mountain. They can be my context, like Master of All Masters, or we can just plain drill them again and 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 again. I believe that it's nice to have at least 4 ways to remember a word. So here we have, hi Argel, Argel. How do we pronounce your name and where are you from? So here's an example of 4 ways to remember a word. The word must, which is a complicated word anyway. Good afternoon. It's a complicated word anyway. In many languages, we don't have modals. In Hebrew, we don't have modals. But we do have gum. And we must, I like to use this as an example. We have must gum. And mustik in Hebrew is the word for gum. So we say we must chew must gum because it's better for our teeth. There's no sugar in must gum. We must chew must gum. Here we have a translation. We have to. It's necessary. And we must clean that dust. I'm sure you can understand that here in Rehovot, we have a lot of dust. We can use a picture. You are special every day, but on your birthday, you are extra special. Words have their own way. We can remember things better when the information has a context or a narrative attached. But we also require a personal and individual way to remember. And that's why it's often important. The Hickey Method works this way. Does anybody here know about the Hickey Method? The Hickey Method works this way, where we ask the students to find a way to help them remember the sound of a letter based on something that it reminds them of. Something in L1, something that they have, something that sounds like something. Personal and individual, plus context, plus narrative, we're in great shape. By the time we do that, maybe we'll remember 5 words. I'm kidding. Don't tell anybody that that's what I said. So here's a nice vocabulary map. You see here we have synonyms. We can draw a picture. We use it in a meaningful sentence. The synonyms, you can write other words for English. If you notice, this is from a social studies page that I found, but I like to use it for vocabulary for us. Definition in our own words, you can translate it, and the vocabulary word goes here. Part of this activity is to help create multiple ways for storage so that my access to it is increased. If I have, I need glasses. Okay, I didn't always need glasses, but now I need glasses. So it's very convenient for me to have 1 pair of glasses in my bag and 1 pair of glasses in the car and 1 pair of glasses in the back seat of the car and 1 pair I buy the very, very cheap ones, and 1 pair of glasses in my other bag and 1 pair of glasses in my coat and 1 pair of glasses in the kitchen. And then it's very convenient. I'm always going to find a pair of glasses, except of course when I really, really need them. Okay. So let's have a general review, everybody. Phonological means, anybody? What does Phonological mean? Who remembers? Nobody remembers. Everybody left. Water, yay! Squibs and crackers, anybody remember? See, you're doing great. Yay. Pants, trousers, thank you, Dina. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Rachel. Master, how do you say master? What's his real name in the story? Da-da, 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 da, da-da, da-da, da, da. Yay, Claire. What's the name of the castle? Yay, Dina. What's the name of the castle? Anybody remember? Anybody remember? Anybody remember? High Topper Mountain, yay, Dina 59 points. The name of the cat, the name of the cat, the name of the cat. Anybody? No, I'm sure I'm making you crazy with all my noise. Does anybody remember the name? There you go, Orly, Whitefaced Simony. Thank you very much. You did very well. Oh, everybody gets mechiot kapayim soarot, as we say. Yay, hooray. Okay, next one. I bet if I had done it in a more quiet voice, some of you wouldn't have been so stressed and would have had an easier time recalling the words. How many of you found it easier to go from the funny word to English? And how many of you found it easy to go from the English to the funny word? Just think about it. You don't have to report. This is the castle, High Topper Mountain, saved from Cockalorum by Pandalorum. Sometimes we forget from the funny word to English. From funny to English is easier. Yes, I agree with you. Sometimes we forget we're teaching kids because we're so focused on teaching kids. And we forget that it's the kids that we're teaching and not necessarily the material that we have to get the kids to learn. And if we make a connection between the kids and what we're teaching, which we can do in English and we can't do as easily in any other subject, if we can connect them, we have it made in the shade, as they say. Contact. Does anybody remember the TV show Contact from 1,000 years ago? It was a wonderful children's show called Contact. And the title of the show was Contact is the Reason That Everything Happens. Absolutely. High school students, absolutely. Absolutely. They have to have fun. That's right. They have to enjoy it. That's right. They have to use it. Absolutely. Absolutely. Lifelong learners understand and remember information by relating facts to larger ideas. In order for information to be understood and remembered, it needs to be processed and it needs to be connected. We need to find it connected to things that are interesting. So if we have, let's say, new vocabulary from a story, it's a very nice way to have the kids use that within the story to connect it to the story, but also to see if they can connect it to something out of the story. I like when I teach a story or a text to identify words that are text specific that they need to understand in order to understand the text of the story, and which of the words are vocabulary, vital vocabulary that they need for outside, for additional stories. It's a nice way to sort of distinguish between the words for myself before I teach and for my students as well. So in this course, what we're going to try to do is we're going to see how we can learn together from our learners to be better teachers for our learners. And I hope to be learning with all of you very, very soon. There's some important things that Aryeh, who spoke at the beginning, asked me to say, so I'm going to say them now. I hope you join our course. We'll have 14 sessions online via the Moodle through Mofet. And what I would like to point out is that each of you has particular areas of interest within this field. Some of you wrote about it at the beginning. I will relate to that specifically in your responses in the Moodle assignments and when you write to me. And also I'd be happy to communicate with you extra Moodle-y if you'd like. We're also going to have 2 synchronous sessions like this one with more of your input. And you'll receive a certificate of course completion when you complete the course. And if you decide to take this course within the next week or so and decide to pay, then there's a 20% discount. So I think those are the important things that we have to say. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you for spending your time. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for joining from, I think, many, many areas of the globe. Thank you for just being. And just remember, whenever we get stuck, the most important thing to do is just to breathe. So thank you very much and good night. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them now. I'm happy to discuss anything with anybody. If anybody wants to ask a specific question, I'm here for the next 10 to 15 minutes if anybody would like to say anything. I want to thank all of you very, very much for participating, for sharing, for asking, for being such active learners. It was really my pleasure. So if there's anything anybody wants to ask, it's personal, it's fine. Thank you. Oh, Liliana, I didn't even see you before. So thank you. I think you register through Mofet, Therese. What do you mean for online teaching? It could be. It could be. Oh, I didn't even see you on Liliana. I'm so sorry. I didn't welcome you. Hi, Archer. What kind of information would you like? Hi, Dina. Oh, Dina Le. Dina, hug, 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 Dina. Archel, is that how you pronounce your name? I'm sorry, you came in late. Yes. So, oh, I'm glad. Thank you, Liliana. How can you register? How can you get more information? I think if you go into the Mofet.
Arona,
Ken.
tomorrow we will send more information about the course.
Okay, great.
And also how to register.
Okay, terrific. Thank you, Aryeh.
And also, of course, the recording, the webinar recording, and more information how to contact us.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So, Acher, I guess I get the information from Aryeh tomorrow. And if nobody has, I'm here if anybody wants us to ask something specific. Of course, it'll deal with sentence structure, it'll deal with grammar, it'll deal with reading comprehension, with writing. That's what we're going to talk about, all the different aspects of how we try to teach kids with learning disabilities. It is, to a certain extent, a very introductory course, but we're going to try to touch on as many of the fields as possible, number one. And number two, the different age groups that are important to you and to me. And a lot of contemporary things. There's so much research being done now, and there's been so many changes. Does it count for Ishtalmut? Aryeh, does it count for Ishtalmut? Yes. Yes, it does. 30 hours or something?
30 hours, yes.
30 hours, yes. Chana, is that okay? Great, yeah. So we're going to try to touch on all those things, and I hope I'll be able to answer some of your questions. And I'm sure we're all going to learn a lot from each other. I already learned a lot from you. Thank you, Chana. You too have a lovely evening. Whatever's left of the evening. Thanks, Lisa. That's nice. Thank you. You have some really good people teaching at David Yelin with you, like top people. I know that. So it's a great department. Great department. Okay, everybody. So good night or good morning, or let's see, California is 11 hours away. Argentina is 5 hours away. Oh, good afternoon. Archel, where are you? Yes, the online academy. That's it. Exactly, Therese. Colombia. Anachon, you said that, Colombia. Turns out I have relatives in Colombia. Okay, good night. Good night. Good night.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Arona,
thank you, Aryeh, for being here.
For the interesting and enjoyable webinar.
My pleasure.
And to you all, thank you for joining us, and have a good day. And hope to see you in the course. Thanks.
Okay, everybody. Toodaloo. Good night. Bye-bye. אריה, זה היה בסדר?
מצוין. נדבר טלפונית.
טוב, ביי ביי.